Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Tim and I'm currently a full-time grad student studying Masters of Industrial and Organizational Psychology while working full-time as a labor planner. So today we're going to be talking about how to manage my time and how I increase the productivity of my work. When it comes to productivity, essentially it is just maximizing your output while minimizing the input. So in other words, that means you're trying to get as much work done as possible in as little time as possible. As someone who works full-time and is also a full-time student, time management and productivity is pretty important if I want to have any form of life outside my work and studies. So there's actually 5 things that I do on a consistent basis to ensure that I'm as productive as possible. So number one of the things that I use to ensure that I am on top of my game when it comes to productivity is I use a checklist. Greg McEwen, the author of Essentialism, said, in situations when you're dealing with breathtaking and sometimes suffocating levels of complexity, you need a system to fix it. And as it turns out, checklist is actually absurdly simple yet effective solution. So what a checklist does is that it breaks down a complex problem into simple steps that's much easier to tackle. And the process is you do the first thing first, and then you go on to the next thing, and so on and so forth. Though being a labor planner or being a grad student is nowhere near the level of breathtaking complexity, a checklist does also offer a similar level of efficiency when it comes to maximizing your productivity. So by preparing a checklist of the things that needs to be done the following day, it creates a direction and a breakdown of the things that needs to be done, the time it requires to finish each task, and also just a comprehensive plan of how you plan to utilize your productive hours. So that brings us to our second tip, that is to plan and allocate your time accurately. So there's this law called the Parkinson's law, which says that the time it takes for you to complete each task actually balloons and fills into the time that's available. This is due to your psychological reasoning that you have just to reason as to why you give yourself that amount of time. Meaning, let's say you're given a project that takes 2 or 3 days, but you gave yourself a week of deadline. Just because you have 7 days to do it, you actually look at the project and perceive it as more daunting or more complex than it actually is. This graph of Parkinson's law that shows the relationship between the time allocated and effort. So the more you allocate your time to it, there's actually a steep drop of effort once you over allocate your time. So to overcome this, you should try to figure out the amount of time you've been taking for each task and just slice it in half, essentially. Once you slice it in half and see how you feel, if you're comfortable with it, you think the time is good, try to slice it down a little bit more. But if it feels a little bit too overwhelming, then give yourself just a tiny bit more time. So number 3, the tip that I have for anyone trying to be productive is to give yourself a deadline. The truth is, even the most renowned productivity guru has a productivity slump or procrastinate one way or another. So part of productivity and being productive is how fast you can actually jump back and bounce back from that slump. Therefore, to overcome this slump, I would give yourself a little bit of a push or an incentive, and a deadline kind of just does just that. So let's say at work, if you're given a project that you absolutely dread and you hate the context of the project, but you actually finish the project by the deadline just to avoid the negative consequences. So in this context, we are tied up by the work, our reputation, or money, and pretty much we'll just do whatever it takes in order to finish the project. The reality is that when you give yourself a deadline and you have a positive or negative consequence attached to it, the deadline actually means something to us. So that becomes a good way to really milk our potential. A good way to do this is actually get a friend involved and just make a bet with a friend. So let's say you are trying to write a book and you're trying to write 5,000 words a day. So make a bet with a friend, tell this person that you give him or her $20 if you don't finish those 5,000 words every single day. Most friends will say yes because there's only good things for that person, because all they do is just get $20 if you don't finish your work. But when you do this, you actually find yourself being more productive and being more insensitized to do more just to avoid that $20 worth of financial loss. And number 4, to ensure that I'm as productive as possible, is that I actually create an environment that actually fosters productivity. So since the pandemic started, I believe a lot of us started working from home. So those of you who can probably understand how distractive working from home is. When you're working from home, it may be tempting for you to work while you spend time with your family, but when you're actually trying to be productive, you really need to segregate yourself from all the distraction that's happening at home. What you want to do is to set yourself for success by putting yourself in an environment that actually encourages you to enter the state of flow and also minimize distractions. This can be setting up a room just to be an office for you to do your productive work, or if you're living in a place that has very limited space, I highly suggest you using one of these noise canceling headphones. Just as a signal for your housemates to show that you actually dedicated your work at this time and you shouldn't be bothered unless there's an emergency. So best-selling author Wendell Yu actually said that 80% of his 2 bestseller books about entrepreneurship actually is completed in these uninterrupted hours. So he'll take weekends or days away from his family and friends and just lock himself up in a cabin or go to a coffee shop. Though you don't have to be that extreme, but just finding a place for you to be with your thoughts and also just away from all the distractions that can really unleash your fullest potential to work productively. So he said that once he enters this state of flow and he's with his thoughts and is dedicated into his work, he can knock out 80%, and once he goes back to his home environment, that 20% actually becomes a breeze. So finally, the last tip I have for anyone trying to be productive is to declutter, both physically and mentally. So by decluttering physically, I mean that you're cleaning or organizing your desk. So by doing this, you're removing the visual stimulus that's actually causing you to have increased anxiety or stress levels. Without this, you're seeing piles of paper piling up, empty bottles everywhere, pens laying everywhere, all those distractions and those unorganized stuff around that really makes it much harder for you to concentrate and focus on the task at hand. So by mentally decluttering, I mean taking a time away from distraction, just playing catch up with your mind. Take a moment and sit with yourself quietly and reflect on your emotion states and what you've been doing recently, and kind of just relax a little bit and reflect what you've been thinking and what you've been doing. So by taking a step back and in that moment to yourself and just reflect on your thoughts and your stress levels, it really kind of let your brain reset a little bit. So this is kind of like meditation, but also kind of like a self-reflective / mental awareness exercise. It's kind of just for you to look at the task at hand as a bigger picture to see if the things that you're worried about and you're stressing over are really worth feeling overwhelmed about. So by looking at the bigger picture, you look at the task at hand, you often find that the stuff you're stressing over are not really as stressful as you think. Just having that peace of mind and just look at the bigger picture really put your mind at ease and in the best position for you to concentrate and be productive at the same time. So there you have it. Those are the 5 things that I do regularly to increase my productivity at home while working and studying and trying to balance life in general. If you find this video helpful, just let me know. It'd be helpful to kind of just see your response and what you think and what you like and don't like about it. If not, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.